Welcome to the first Bernard J. Dunn Pharmacy Alumni Roundtable. I'll hand it off to the Dean, who's our MC.
I was lecturing one time, and I went to one of our audio techs, and I said, you know, the lecture went fine, but there was this noise that kept coming and going on the sound system. He said, that was you. I said, really? I turned it to mute, and he said, no, it's still getting electronic signal. So if you've got one of these, it's probably a good time to turn it off for the duration of the meeting. It'll be about an hour. And I want to welcome everybody here. This is a good turnout. We have the avowed goal of trying to give 4 distinguished alumnus an opportunity to interact with you, to answer your questions about where they went with their careers, what influenced their decisions, and what you might want to consider in making your own decisions. I just finished lecturing for an hour and 45 minutes to the students about leadership, and one of the things I've impressed on them is having a network of people that can assist you in achieving your career goals. And so I think these individuals are certainly capable of allowing you an opportunity to see how they reached their point in life, but also about how to go about networking and developing your own strategy for developing your career, which is a very important stage for a lot of you beginning as you're beginning your 4th professional years. I want to introduce each one of them individually in a second, but I'm going to introduce Debbie Orbach and let her bring greetings and some instruction from the alumnus.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean McKay. I appreciate it. I actually graduated from the business school at Shenandoah, and I currently am on the Alumni Board of Directors, where I chair the Admissions and Career Services Committee, hence my presence here today. So I cannot tell you how excited we are to see you here and to have this event actually come to fruition. As the leader of that Admissions and Career Services Committee, we really are looking at a lot more initiatives to roll out throughout the whole university on the career services side. As Dr. McKay just said, strategies and benefits for you, helpful hints, knowledge that you won't otherwise get, that we can somehow get to you through that career services program is what we're looking to do throughout the university to better prepare you to go into the real world. So we're delighted to have you here, and I want to, on behalf of all the Shenandoah alumni, welcome you to this inaugural event. It is the first. And what we hope to do is roll these out in all of the other schools all through the university. And I just met with a delightful grad school student. She's not actually a grad yet, from the business school, who is leading the charge over there, setting up more career services, an actual career services center there to help prepare students in the business school to go into the real world. So I'm delighted to see this. I want to welcome you again on behalf of all the alumni. And I would like to also thank Jane Pittman, who runs the Office of Alumni Affairs. Jane, raise your hand so everybody can see you. Meredith Cox, and any other alums here today? Any other alums want to raise your hand? Yes, please. Hey, hey. So we've got alums in the room, so welcome on behalf of all of us. Again, the pharmacy school and Dr. McKay, thank you. You jumped all over the idea of having this kind of panel with these esteemed graduates here to help share knowledge and to help you as you go out and to start your career. And this is just a fabulous new event. And again, we hope to hold you up as a model throughout the university to have these events at the various schools. So lunch has been provided by the Office of Alumni Affairs. We want to thank them. And again, we hope that you take away today some benefit, some knowledge that will help you as you begin your career in pharmacy. So that's our goal ultimately, is to help prepare you for what we call the real world. So thank you for being here. I hope you get tons of information out of it. Thank you to the panel. We're delighted to see this happening. And again, thank you, Dr. McKay. We really appreciate it. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. McKay. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. It is interesting because we keep touch with some of our graduates. In fact, Miriam was here last week for a pharmacy advisory committee, and we try and keep up with their accomplishments. But every time I have a chance to read their bio sketches, I think, man, I'd like to be doing what they're doing. It's not because being a dean's all that bad, but I also mentioned that Jane Pittman's daughter is a P1 student, so she's done more than her share to make sure that we have our class full. I want to introduce each one of these individuals and allow them to say a little bit about themselves. This is a Q&A format. This is up to you. If you have questions that you would like to raise at this juncture in your career, no matter where you are as a student, These are the people to be talking to because they represent different areas of pharmacy practice that are unique, exciting. They're doing neat things in their particular points in their career, and they represent a diversity of activity that pharmacists can do. There was a publication that Pfizer put out about a dozen years ago in which they summarized 600 things that people can do with a pharmacy career. And these individuals exemplify some of the uniqueness of that opportunity, that you have the degree and you can do a lot of things with it. Beginning with Nana Sappho, who, if I am correct, you're doing preceptorship for 4 schools? That's a lot of work, Nano. We need to talk about time management. You were also, you were there with Walter Reed when they moved over to their new campus, correct? So you had a chance to move to their new facility up by NIH. And he's in the heart of the Bethesda Naval Center, the Walter Reed Medical Center, the new facility, and also right across the street from NIH. So they have an amazing campus up there. If you haven't had a chance to go up to Maryland and see it, they certainly have an outstanding opportunity for you. And he's looking for students that are outstanding as well. So if you're interested in seeing what Nano does up close and personal, this is a good time to get his business card, just a hint. Miriam Tappa E was a faculty member, a student. She did an outstanding job of helping us develop the policies and procedures that you're currently participating in. She was here almost at the inception of the school in almost every way. And she's contributed mightily. She's on the Pharmacy Advisory Committee, and you'll get to hear about her unique work in clinical care in a few seconds. Sarah Snow is interesting because she was an overcommitter to begin with. Sarah Snow did everything. And then she decided that she wanted to go out and explore biotech. And she did a fellowship. She then became so attractive to them, they hired her. And so now she's working in the hotbed of biotech up in Boston, Massachusetts, and she can tell you a little bit about where all that pharmacogenomics information that we fill your heads with can take you if you're so interested. And then we have somebody who was here at the beginning, Pat Ross. Patricia was always interesting because she would come into my office and say, "Really? Really?" She always questioned me from the beginning. And it was like one of those things when you're already feeling insecure, it just doesn't take much to cause you to wet your pants. And Pat was one of those people that always was self-assured and confident. She now works at one of the premier medical institutes in the world, Johns Hopkins. And she has done a remarkable job with Johns Hopkins and also with us in terms of spreading the value of the education that you're going to get. So if you're interested in working at a premier research institute, in an area of highly competitive activity, she is one of the ones that you want to talk to. Let me pass this to them. They have microphones, and they're going to spend about 2 minutes telling you a little bit more in depth about what they do and their background, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the individuals here in the audience.
We'll start with most senior, be Miriam.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Tappa. I graduated from the Bernard J. Dunn School of Pharmacy. I was part of the inaugural class. I remember coming here. We didn't have enough chairs to sit in. I came here, my parents came here, and we took a chance. Met with Dean McKay, and he really had that vision. When I think of Dean McKay, I think of vision. I think vision is something that someone else can see, which is invisible to others. That's from the words of Jonathan Swift. And in that, I saw that in Dean McKay, recognized that, I think that's really still a part of this university. And then after that, I joined the university. I was on the faculty, and I also did recruitment for the School of Pharmacy. Also worked in an independent pharmacy, and then later with a community pharmacy. A couple of years into it, I decided that I wanted to go back and I wanted to pursue a residency. So I did a one-year residency in pharmacy practice, and I did that with Shenandoah University, with Valley Health, specifically in Front Royal with Dr. Gretchen Johnson. And it really was an invaluable experience for me because it taught me a lot of really good clinical transferable skills, and I feel very fortunate to be able to exercise my pharmacy skills in the manner that I'm able to. And the residency really was instrumental for me able to go into a position where I'm able to really be involved in clinical excellence. So.
Hello, I'm Patricia Ross. I'm the second class to graduate, so follow just behind Miriam, and would echo her comments about Dean McKay and really why I chose to come here. Moved all the way here from Boston, so you can imagine big city to Winchester. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and really Dean McKay is the reason that I chose to come here over other various schools of pharmacy. So I am forever grateful and happy that I'm here today. And I would say to all of you, you should be excited that we're here only because folks like Miriam and I didn't have anyone. There were no alum. Miriam was the first class, I was the second class, and so we had our faculty to tap into, and that's certainly an excellent resource. But certainly engage with the alumni as much as possible because we're here to offer guidance and support. So I knew probably second or third year in talking to faculty, because we had a lot of young faculty then, that pharmacy practice residency was something of interest. I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into, but I said, why not take a chance? So I moved back up to Boston and did a PGY1, pharmacy practice residency, and then wasn't sure what to do after my first year of residency, and I heard talk of second year residency. And back then, my graduating class, I think there were 68 of us. 4 of us went on to do PGY1 residencies, and then I was the sole survivor that dared do a second year. So I chose to do a second year in ambulatory care and matched at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, and that's what brought me there, and I've been there ever since, and I have to say it's been the greatest adventure. So since taking on the second year of residency at Hopkins, I have then become the program director for the ambulatory care residency program, and have in that kind of same realm taken on a faculty position at the University of Maryland. So I graduated 10 years, well, it was coming on 11, it's 2001. Over the past 10 years, my career has continued to grow and develop, and really that's due to great mentors that I've established along the way, still keeping in touch with Dean McKay, other faculty here, my program director for my residency, and my senior director of pharmacy, Daniel Ashby. And it's folks like that that have really encouraged me to continue and grow and push myself to do things like board certification, become a program director, take on as many pharmacy students as possible. So we have currently 25 residents at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, and we have, today specifically, we have 40 students there on rotation. So as you can imagine, my workday is pretty busy, but I'll pass it on. We can open up the floor to questions in a bit.
Hi, my name is Nana Safo. I'm also a third class, following Patricia. I'm the program director, PGY1 program director over at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. And I'm also clinical pharmacy specialist at the critical care area. We serve the wounded warriors. Our facility is also open to students. We have students from all over the local area, University of Maryland, Shenandoah University, Virginia Commonwealth, and then we also have some in the University of Iowa or Buffalo. So when I was asked to come over here, it was no-brainer, but I said, hey, why not? We're looking to work with all students, and we'll continue to help. I got over here in a very bizarre time. I was working as a pharmacy technician over at Fairfax Hospital. I was doing the night shift, and then one of my colleagues said that, hey, I'm going to open house at Shenandoah University. So I'll go with you. Just will go with it. So we came over here, got introduced to Dr. McKay and everything, and one thing that stood out was informatics, technology. I think we were the second class to, I don't know if Marianne had you have the opportunity to use the laptop too?
We did, yes.
Okay.
They had them back then.
Right. Yeah, they took it back. But that was one thing that stood out. I'm like, oh, this is great, you know. And came over here. The first year, got hit with a blizzard. We're out of school for about 2 weeks. And the beauty of it is that Dr. McKay will walk over here, survey all this area, look at the snow, and will call out and say, okay, school is canceled. So that's how I got, and then after graduation, I went to do my PGY1 residency over at Columbus Regional Hospital. I came back to Sibley Memorial Hospital, and I started the residency program over there before moving to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, which used to be National Naval Medical Center. And now we were integrated, Walter Reed and National Naval combined. So Walter Reed maintained the name. So we now call Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, where we see a lot of our wounded warriors. When they come up, they are triaged into 3 places. One of the biggest area is Walter Reed, where they do the neuro and all those stuff, amputees. Burns will go to Texas, and we are very busy working with them, and that's why we want all students to come over and see what type of wounds and everything that they come up with. I'm not just saying that one because we love them to have that, but it's an opportunity for pharmacists, it's an opportunity for medical residents. We work in an interdisciplinary committee, team, and therefore you have the opportunity to see all those things, and I will wait for more questions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Snow. I graduated from Shenandoah in 2010. I got both my PharmD and my MBA here while I was going to school. So I will share a Dean McKay story. Actually, when I came to interview here, I didn't know anyone, obviously. I was trying to look to see if it was going to be a good fit for me. And my dad actually came to interview with me, and he was sitting in, I think he was sitting in the lobby. And I was finishing up my interview, and the student was taking me back to the lobby. And I walk in, and there's this man, like, that had gotten a map out and was highlighting a route, like the best way to get back to North Carolina. And the student's like, your dad's talking to the dean. And so he made me feel very welcome, even when I was here to interview. So that was a big factor in me deciding to come to Shenandoah as well. It's a great place. I feel like it's, the size makes it, for me, it was a selling point. I went to a large university for undergrad, so I love that it's very close knit, that you get to have great relationships with your professors, with the faculty, and they're very open to having those relationships. So just a little bit about me. As Dean McKay said, I was an overcommitter. I was involved in a lot of organizations here at the pharmacy school. I think my third year, I was actually president of one, vice president of 2 others, officer in a 4th, and then a member of a 5th organization. And I was also getting my MBA as well. My 4th year, I did a 10-week rotation, my MBA rotation at Sharing Plow in New Jersey in regulatory affairs. I had decided in my 3rd year of pharmacy school that I really wanted to do a PharmD fellowship in industry. And so after that rotation, it really solidified my decision. And I pursued fellowships, regulatory affairs fellowships with 6 different companies. Very rigorous interview process. You have to go through 2 to 3 rounds of interviews with each of these companies to be considered for a fellowship, and then potentially get offered on-site interviews at the companies. So it's a very rigorous process. And then I was fortunate enough to get a fellowship in regulatory affairs and drug safety at Biogen IDEC in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I went there directly after graduating. After a year, they offered me a position in the regulatory affairs department, which that was what I wanted to do, so I was very happy with that. During the fellowship, I got a chance to publish. I got a chance to precept students from Northeastern University and Massachusetts College of Pharmacy. I also got a chance to do some teaching. And then right now, as working in the regulatory department, I work on the clinical development side. So my group puts together investigational new drug applications to start testing drugs in humans, and then we see it all the way through the process where we put together the NDAs and the BLAs that actually get the product on the market, and then we maintain the product license once it's on the market. We provide a lot of guidance. We're kind of the conduit between the company and FDA and other health authorities. And I also currently, I precept for a fellowship program, and I still precept some for Northeastern and MCP students, but actually in October I started precepting for Shenandoah PharmD MBA students as well. So, I mean, I think with that, I'll open up to questions.
Okay, let me give you one Sarah Snow story. I was having lunch with her one time, and I said, how did the rotation go, the 10-week rotation? She said, well, it was kind of interesting. She said, I walked in the door, and they found out that I had an MBA. I was working on my MBA, and they tasked me to work on a comparison between a drug that they were thinking about introducing for Hep C, I believe, and another competitor's product to see if they were going to be competitive or if they were going after different parts of the disease life cycle. And she said, I did the work and I presented it to the marketing people, and they liked it so well they wanted to use it as a part of their implementation plan, their marketing strategy. So when you think about the 10-week rotations that you do, particularly the MBAs, and think, well, it's just making up time, I'm putting my hours, I'm going to get my license, she actually was very determined to use that time with the industry to prepare herself for the next step. And it did, I think, actually prepare her for the next step, because she had something credible coming out of that 10-week rotation that she could turn around and show prospective fellowships that I've actually done something with my time, and they took her over other highly competitive individuals. So be thinking about this as you're talking to them, because the things that you do here are largely educational and necessary for you to become licensed, but you have a certain degree of latitude in how you use some of those experiences by doubling up on rotations or taking specialty rotations that better prepare you for the market and make you more competitive. And if you're thinking about a residency or fellowship, that has to be one of your foremost considerations, because it's a very competitive field and not everybody matched with the rotations or the fellowships and residencies that they wanted. So you need to be thinking now about how to use your time wisely to actually prepare you for that. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. And you have mics, you need to use the mic so we can capture the information.
Good job, Dean McKay. I think you basically asked my question. It seems like the four of you had very different points in your careers that you found I guess what I would call a career home. You comfortable where you are. Like Dean McKay was saying, is there any point in time, P1, P4, or after, that you think if you would have started exploring those avenues a little bit sooner, do you think it would have given you an advantage? Or, like, for example, I'm a veteran, so what you were saying kind of touches home to me. If there isn't a position available working for Walter Reed or one of those institutes, can you give us some insight as to how to make a contact to possibly, get to know somebody that would be involved in the hiring process?
Yes, the hiring process, since it's a federal employment, basically has to go through the USA jobs. But having said that, there are a lot of contacts, especially with a pharmacy. As a profession, our hiring are more flexible and different from the normal hiring. We have something we call a special hiring, which means that the director can actually hire direct rather than going through the normal USA jobs. So having somebody within the pharmacy, networking is very, very important, because we hear a lot about the openings, and knowing what you can bring to the table and knowing your interests is very, very important. And I know somebody who is very good, who is very, very enthusiastic about this position. Do you want to try? And I can contact you. So it's still networking to get through the normal loophole or the normal cycle. Yep.
I would concur with that. During my time, when I look back as a student, when I was here as a pharmacy student, as Sarah, you were talking. I think it's very important to be active and involved. It's I think wonderful to be a member, say, of an organization or of a group or a club, but I think also to take an active role in that and see what your objectives and goals are by joining, say, an organization. Attending, when you do have the opportunity, pharmacy meetings and conferences, meeting with other students from other schools to see what they're doing. Talking to pharmacists that are in the profession to see what what they're doing, how did they get there. Talking to faculty, I think as you have a wonderful resource here to tap into. Talking to alums, but also I also believed in running for office in some of those things that that I was passionate about. I think that is also key, because by doing so, not only do you give back, but also it helps you grow both personally and professionally. And so, and all of those experiences and those folks that you meet along the way, along your journey, those do become your network. They also become your friends, and they become resources. So I think it's so important to be open to that, step into it, and take those. I really view them as opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's great. I definitely agree. And what you were saying earlier about going to national meetings, I wouldn't have known about PharmD fellowships if I hadn't have gone to APHA national meeting where there was a residency showcase, and I went and there was Rutgers fellowships program. They had a booth there, and they told me about it, and they had an information reception that night, and they invited me to go there, and I made contacts with fellows. I talked to current Rutgers fellows at the time. I kept their contact information. I kept contacting them with questions. And then I went to another APHA regional meeting, and Rutgers was there again. And I got contact information for the fellows I talked to there, and through those fellows, I was able to establish my industry rotation because Shenandoah, at that time, I wanted to do my MBA rotation, my 10-week rotation in industry, and there wasn't really an opportunity, so I had to make that opportunity for myself. And I did that through establishing connections and keeping those connections, maintaining relationships, I think is very important. And that's really it's how you get places, I think. It's not, obviously if somebody knows you have the background knowledge and they know you'll do a good job, then if you know someone and they know that you're interested in something and an opportunity arises, you're probably going to be the first person they go to because you do have that relationship with them.
Yeah, one comment I'd make, and I tell this to students frequently, if you want a job, you're going to get a job. You want a specific job, now that's going to take a little work. And it means that you have to start making contact with the young faculty that you brush up against in the hall and say, hey, I'm thinking about X, Y, Z, how do I do it? Because they've come down the same career path, but they're a couple of cycles ahead of you, and they can give you advice on who to talk to, they can give you advice on how to prepare, they can talk to you about how to interview, how to prepare your resume. We're going to teach you how to do a resume, but that's basically a garden variety resume. If you want to make it stand out, make it really have snap, you need to talk to somebody that really understands how to design one, how to use white space and graphics, and really make it stand out from all the other piles of resumes that these people are going to see. They don't call the ASHB mid-year meeting a meat market for nothing. There is a crush of people, there's a lot of activity, and if you don't know what you're doing and carve a path through that sea of humanity, you're going to walk out 4 days later with a hangover and nothing to show for it.
You sent me to that meat market meeting.
Yes, I did. And I shepherded you through it, too.
Good. Yes, you did. The one thing I will add, I think for anyone in the room who's considering any type of pharmacy practice upon graduation, the first thing is it's never too early to start. So any first years in the room? Awesome. Yay. So this is the perfect time to tap in. Start thinking about it now. I know you're only in your fall semester of your first year, but really you asked when did we start thinking about it. I even felt like second year was a little bit too late and we were a very new school of pharmacy. So for Miriam and Nano and I, we really had to go out and not only sell ourselves, we had to sell the idea of the Bernard J. Dunn School of Pharmacy. So it was twice as challenging. So hopefully those of us that are up here have paved the way, so now when you all go and apply places, they say, Shenandoah University, yes, I'm familiar. I know folks that have come through the program. That's an excellent program. But having said that, in your first year is the time to start thinking about what comes after graduation. Regardless of where you plan to practice, and I'm in a health system, I'm at Hopkins, and we have very close ties with ASHP, and the ASHP vision by 2020 is that anyone that wants to work in an inpatient pharmacy has to have a PGY1 pharmacy practice residency. So that means by the time you all are graduated and a few years out, if you want to work as a staff pharmacist in an inpatient hospital pharmacy, ASHP is recommending that you have a PGY1 pharmacy practice residency. I echo the same for community practice as well. If you're thinking about a career in retail because the dollars are good, and I will say that competitively, some hospitals competitively pay as well as retail, But if you're thinking about going into a community setting, residency is also equally as important. I guarantee you, although it's a year and everyone says it's an extra year and you're paid a third or a half of the salary of what you would get as a pharmacist, we've all been there, right? And we all made that commitment. And it's a tough one to make, but I guarantee you it will certainly carry you leaps and bounds further than colleagues that did not. So I'll get off my residency soapbox for now.
That's okay.
Just for now.
She doesn't get off it very long, so she'll be back in a minute. One thing I would point out, there was a press release that Dawn Harvard, the chair of pharmacy practice, gave me about 2 weeks ago, in which Walgreens announced that they're entering into a joint venture to basically do discharge planning for hospitals. And so while we're talking about an arbitrary delineation between what you do in community, what you do in hospital, and hospital being obviously something that requires a PGY1 residency, you're going to probably see that line blur even more, because everybody's worried about management of discharge, keeping them out of the hospital longer than 30 days. And I think the likelihood is that you're going to need a residency to manage those kinds of unique pilot projects that then evolve into the new practice models, and you guys are well positioned to be there at the inception. So be thinking that rather than just thinking strictly between community and pharmacy. It's not going to be just one or the other. It's probably going to be something in between the two.
And I think as pharmacists, as a pharmacy as a profession, I think we have to look at it broadly as well. When you look at other healthcare professionals, there is a report that says by the year 2020, we're going to be short approximately 91,000 both primary care and specialists for physicians. And so I think with that said, and with pharmacy growing the way it has, I think there'll be more opportunities for pharmacists to be able to practice in a different light than we have been. And I think we have to step up to accept those responsibilities and opportunities. And it begins in the P1 year.
Next question. Somebody come forward.
Can I ask a question from Ashburn?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess it's probably more for Patricia Ross. The transition of care role that Megan Davlin has is similar to what Dean McKay was just talking about with Walgreens. To get into a role like that, would you suggest more of an AmCare route through a community setting or through more of a clinical setting when you do your residency?
So we have a transitions of care program at Hopkins. We were one of 10 hospitals in the country to receive a federally funded grant to help support more pharmacists coming on board. So essentially the thought is, getting back to what Dean McKay just mentioned, that any patient that's discharged from Hopkins, before they leave the bedside, they leave there with their outpatient medicines. And so we have pharmacists that work for the community side that go to they come into the hospital, they do a medication review for the patients, they make sure that what they're leaving with is, number one, what the doctor wants them to leave with, but also, equally as important, that it's covered by their insurance or that they can afford it. That we're not just sending them out and then they go to the local pharmacy and half of the drugs aren't covered, and then often the patient then has no means to get back into the hospital to tell the physician it's not covered. So we've hired, we have 4 pharmacists now. We plan to hire probably another 5 in the next 1 to 2 years with this grant money to help do that across the entire institution. For folks that are interested in that, I would say either certainly for a PGY1 pharmacy practice residency would be a great place to start, or another option is to do a PGY1 community residency. It depends on where you want your final resting place to be. Do you want to work for an inpatient medical institution or a community pharmacy? And think about where you see your career, not just maybe your first job out of graduation, but if you can even look ahead to a few years beyond that. So a PGY1 community residency takes you on a different trajectory, if you will, than a PGY1 pharmacy practice. PGY1 pharmacy practice residencies are all mostly inpatient rotations. There might be an ambulatory care component, although that's not required by ASHP, versus a community residency is all in the community and retail setting. I will note that the individual that oversees that program for Hopkins has her MBA as well, that she got during a 2-year residency program at Hopkins. She did the combined health system pharmacy administration residency and her MBA. Good question.
Next question.
I'd like to springboard on what was just talked about. I noticed that this would also be for Dr. Ross. I noticed that you also got your 2nd-year residency. How valuable was that to you, for you in your progression of your career, to go for a second one as well?
I would not, it's easy for me to say 100% I would not be where I am today had I not done that second year. I practice in a team, with a team of physicians, 15 physicians in a medical office. I have my own clinic. Patients are scheduled to see me. I bill for my services. They pay a copay to see me. I change medicines, I start medicines, I titrate medicines, I do physical assessment, and I would not be in that position had I not done a second year of residency. Equally so, I wouldn't be able to be the program director if I did not do that second year. And trust me, it was not an easy decision. I think Dean McKay said, are you sure? My mom said, are you crazy? You have all these, right? We go to Shenandoah, it's not cheap.
I actually talked to your mother.
Yeah. You end up leaving here with a good amount of loans.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough decision to make to do another year. Instead of making $100,000, I chose to, back then it was $30,000 for residency. And that was a challenging decision to make. But now, 10 years out, it's very easy for me to look back and say, that was a no-brainer. Of course I should have done that. A PGY1, since a lot of folks, the majority of students graduating in 10 years will have a PGY1 pharmacy practice residency. So you have to do something in addition to that to set yourself above and beyond. It wasn't as competitive back then for us. But now, how many in the room are interested in postgraduate training? So, I mean, look at all the hands, and this is just in this small room, right? If you add up all the pharmacy students in the country and think about all the hands that will go up, now everyone's interested in PGY1. As Dean McKay mentioned, last year there were over 500 students that went unmatched. So there are 500 students that wanted to do residency, a first-year residency, that did not get the opportunity because there are not enough programs. So you have to do things now to set yourself apart.
Right. I completely agree, because I think with fellowships as well, you have typically, I think at my company, for 2 positions, we'll interview over 100 people at ASHP mid-year. And it's incredibly competitive, and any chance you get or any opportunity you get to gain more experience in a certain area, or to be not just a member of an organization, like we were saying before, but be involved, that does set you apart, and people notice those things. And so it's incredibly important. And with industry, there's not many positions available. It's very hard to get into, and extremely hard to get in if you don't have some type of experience. So that's why a fellowship is a great way to kind of get your foot in the door. And at the end of the fellowship, you're not going to have an entry-level position. You're going to have a few steps up from that, because you get very high-level experiences. You get to work on high-priority projects, things that someone just coming in and starting an industry typically would not get. And so I think that's a really important thing too with postgraduate training. It's not that it is specialized, but it's that you're getting very, very high quality experiences, and that does make a difference at the end, and you end up a lot farther along than you would be if you just went straight out of school.
Rachel, you had a question?
Yeah. First, I want to thank you, Sarah, because when I came to an open house, you were on the student panel and made quite an impression on me, so thank you. I have a multi-part question for, I think, primarily Miriam. As somebody with a very strong interest in drug information and also geriatrics, but wanting to also have that clinical interaction, doing a PGY1 is a given. But do you have recommendations for what I should look for or ask for in a PGY1 residency? And then do you think a PGY2 in something so specific as drug information is necessary to do that? And what kind of career opportunities can you see in your experience that could sort of integrate those interests?
I think any opportunity that you have to, as Patricia said, to continue on, from the PGY1 to the PGY2, I would highly recommend it. I think you don't get a chance to go back and do that, so I think once you're on the course to doing that, then my recommendation would be to continue that. As to, specifically which one to select, the good news is you have a lot of options. And, so depending on where you want to land, if you want to land more on the inpatient side, in a more inpatient hospital type setting, or if you want to be more in an outpatient side, and by outpatient, it could be in a community type setting, but it could be so much beyond it, similar to, for example, what I'm doing, what Sarah is doing. depending on where you want to land, I think that will then determine which path you take. With drug information, it's so universal to everything all pharmacists do. So I think if you're able to get those skills that you would use on a day-to-day basis to work with, to expand your own knowledge, to understand all the systems, all the technology, which is just amazing. Also understanding, not only the resources, but also kind of looking beyond pharmacy, looking at things like, EHR, electronic health records, for example, that are entering the equation, and how, you marry that with drug information. And I think the opportunities can really be endless with that. But I personally think that drug information is universal to whatever area you land in. Whether it's specific to geriatrics or otherwise. As you go along, you may decide there's something else that maybe even be a better fit for you. So I think that gives you some transferable skills that you can take anywhere that you go within the profession.
And talking about some of the hospitals, they're doing the same model. Like, we got some people who actually will just log in from home, especially during the peak hours, to help, enter orders and everything. So technology is now on the edge of everything that we do. I believe that will be something that we need to take very good care of. Back to Rachel's question regarding what to do with drug information. ASHP now requires everybody to do PGY1 before PGY2, and a lot of schools or a lot of programs are not specifically doing drug information right now. But when I got into PGY1, I changed that idea so many times. First, I wanted to do pediatrics, and all of a sudden, critical care, and all of a sudden, so it was just going round and round and round until I graduated. But once you finish with PGY1, you have a lot of information. You have, that time, have some information as to what to do, and if you still have to do drug information, you can definitely do that. There are some very, very good programs out there that do drug information. And nowadays, they don't just isolate themselves, but they are now attached to so many things. So you can actually see some patients, as you're talking about, and then do your drug information, because everything is now technology. You can do it.
And I would just add too, like we were saying earlier, drug information you can use in any setting. So every pharmaceutical company has a drug information department, and at Biogen, it's mostly pharmacists who work in that department. A lot of them have done some type of drug information residency, and they are able to use those skills. And I think, you get a lot of skills just in school and in your rotations as well. But it really is, it's an area that kind of translates to any setting.
We had a question over here on the side.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm a third-year student, and my question is, what would you recommend to prepare us as third years for rotations next year? And specifically, how do we as Shenandoah compare to other schools, especially for those who are seeking the Baltimore or Northern Virginia clusters? How are we comparable to Maryland students, especially with Dr. Ross, who teaches at Maryland? How do you see us compared to other Maryland students as in terms of competition and competency as well?
Well, naturally, I'm biased. So,
thank God.
We have what you're referring to is our clinical track program that we offer at Johns Hopkins, in that students apply to come to Hopkins for 4 consecutive rotations. And certainly it's a competitive process, and something that I think is worth considering if you have an interest in pursuing postgraduate training in an inpatient setting. It really is a luxury to be able to go to one institution to do sequential rotations, because as you'll soon find out on any given rotation, and yes, Dean McKay sent me to Alaska, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks to get settled and really feel comfortable in the practice environment, and then you only have a few weeks left, and then you're on and you start the process over again. And so the clinical track program really fosters the development of the student, because you have the luxury of being there for more than one rotation. As far as what can set you apart from other students, for Hopkins specifically, we only compare you against your classmates. So I don't know if that's the case for all of the programs. But if you're applying to the clinical track program at Johns Hopkins, if we get 10 applicants from your class, we would compare you to only your class. And we do that, the same procedure for all of the schools that we work with that we allow into the clinical track. So that's a nice, I think, advantage, because while every school has the same standards to abide by, every school is different in its own nature. But what can set you apart, further beyond that in residency, getting back to what we've already talked about, it sounds like we're a broken record, but get involved. I think I said this when I was here in the fall with Dan. Get involved early and as much as possible. Make sure your grades stay up. But it's not all just about an absolute fabulous GPA. You have to make sure you're involved. You have to make sure you're taking advantage of opportunities. Have you done research? Have you presented a poster? Have you published anything? Doesn't have to be New England Journal of Medicine publishing, but have you published in a society newsletter? Have you gone to a national meeting? Have you gone to a local meeting? What have you done beyond the curriculum that's required of you? It's hard here. Pharmacy school is not easy. We get that. And so really it's about pushing yourself to see what else you can take on to set yourself apart. But you should talk to me after. We can talk about clinical track.
And I would add to that, once you have all of those in place, life lessons that my parents shared with me. Number one, when you're going for an interview or you're meeting with someone, don't be late. Dress professionally, and exercise your strong communication skills. And I think those are 3 key factors, kind of personally, that you will have to bring to the table as well.
I think we've got a question over here, but before we do, I will point to the fact that coming from Boston, Trish already knew what frostbite looked like.
Hi, I'm a first-year student, and I think my biggest challenge for undergrad was that, like what you guys are saying, everyone was like, get involved, and I ended up spreading myself out too thin, and I wasn't able to perform academically as well as I wanted to. So my question to you is, what was your biggest challenge throughout your career thus far, and what did you do personally to overcome that challenge?
I guess I'll go first. When I came over here, I was a pharmacy technician and anesthesia technician over at Fairfax Hospital. And I did not quit that position. So when I came over here, I was working on weekends and going to school. But what I did was I made the most out of it. And I need to go back, especially to the first years, and tell you this. When you come here, think about it this way. The final exams that you do is about 40%. And that's what everybody waits till, final test. I'm going to cram everything and then put it. You're going to get only 40%. You need to get involved in the test, those little tests that you do in class, submitting your work on time. They all go hand in hand. And that's exactly what I did. Somebody told me that secret. So I was able to make sure that I stay over here and get my work done, make sure that I submit my work on time, and then just struggle with the 40% for the final test.
Let me make a comment to that. Nano is a good example of how you organize your time. And every one of us feels like we don't have enough of it. He was able to carry on a work routine, which is demanding, commuting, and still do the things that are expected of a student, and it got him where he wanted to go. A lot of students come in here with what I refer to as a high school mentality. They've always had it easy. They've never had to work very hard, and they don't see any reason why that should change. And then they get here and they hit a brick wall and they figure, well, I must be demented or something. The truth of the matter is it's a lot to do with your management of time. And if you can manage your time effectively, this is the time to start learning how to do it, because it's going to be a constant demand and drain on you as you go through life. These are very, very productive people. They didn't learn it overnight. They weren't given that gift of sight when they were undergraduate students. They had to develop techniques that allowed them to manage a lot of competing priorities. And Nano just mentioned that, but that's something that every one of us has to do on a constant basis, because you're not going to get any more than 24 hours. It's up to you how you're going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with that statement, because when I was here, I told you I was involved in a lot of organizations. I was doing the MBA as well as PharmD at the same time. I was working for CVS probably up to 20 hours a week. So I had to learn how to prioritize and manage my time, and I was still able to be involved in all those organizations. And I knew, like, you have to always make sure you have due dates for things. So that helps with the prioritization, but that has helped me so much now in my job, because I'm constantly working on different projects and constantly having to produce things, and I know, like, everything usually will fall on you at once. And so you have to know, tell someone, well, I have these 3 things due on this day, so I can get this to you in 2 days instead of today. And people understand that, because you have so many competing priorities that you have to kind of establish what needs to be done immediately and what can be put off for a couple of days. You'll still get to it, but it'll be higher quality if you do kind of manage your deadlines.
We had a question down here in the front.
I'm an MBA student, and for residency, my question is that, like, if I'm really interested in doing a residency, and I know that it's clinical based, but as far as our curriculum with the MBA goes, we have to substitute our MBA classes with our pharmacy electives. So instead of taking the pharmacy electives, we take our MBA classes. And I was just wondering if that would make us less competitive when we're applying for a residency, because we don't have that kind of knowledge, say, like, if you want to take toxicology or, compounding, because those are the things that we don't get a chance to take.
I can speak for Hopkins specifically. With ACP standards, keep in mind that there are core required rotations that any student graduating from any accredited college of pharmacy has to complete. Right? So everyone take a deep breath, you'll all get those. And so what we do at Hopkins is we just make sure that they're well-rounded, your elective rotations are well-rounded. So it would not be a detriment if instead of taking an additional community rotation or additional hospital-based rotation, you had to take an MBA-related rotation. Nano, is it the same case for your program?
As a program director, we don't look at that. We just look at the core curriculum and make sure that you meet all those requirements. Not taking an elective is not part of it. We don't use it as a critical factor when we are actually interviewing or evaluating a candidate.
And I would also say that I actually, because I did the MBA program as well, and so I missed out on a lot of the pharmacy electives. I remember, I think it was my 3rd year, there was an elective that I was really interested in, so I talked to the professor and I said, is there any way I can just sit in on the elective? And I didn't have to do all of the work. I could kind of do what I wanted to, but I still was able to sit in on the elective and gain more knowledge about the subject.
I want to thank our panel. It's always good to see them back here on home turf. It's always problematic because they sometimes remember things that you'd rather they forget, as is the case with all of you. Doug?
I just had one quick question for the panel. Thank you, Dean McKay. I'm staring at 4 very successful alumni, and all 4 of you, to me, exude professionalism. And I was just hoping, as a closing, maybe if you could comment on how you view professionalism and what role you see that as having played in your success as well as the success of your peers, and maybe any advice that you have for the students in that realm. Thank you.
I would say professionalism, Dr. Lipton, is definitely key. It's not only important professionally, it's also important personally. No matter who you're dealing with, whether it's a fellow colleague or regardless of that person's job or position. And it's very important, when you go for interviews, as you're looking at residencies, if you go to mid-year when you're talking to folks, as you're looking for residencies, they're going to, even though it may not be a formal interview, the whole time that you're communicating with them and interacting with them, they're looking at you and they're trying to understand, what kind of person you are, what your interests are, if you're driven, and also professionalism, courtesy are very, very important. And also, it stays with you. You carry that with you as you go and into becoming a pharmacist. Depending on, you were talking about the home of the pharmacy, depending on where you land, or maybe you change after that. So I think all of those things will stay with you. And one thing I've learned is, I may work with an individual in a certain position, but then I find, if I've switched jobs or if I've been in a different role, if you will, that same person that was working, say, with a manufacturer that I was dealing with, they may be my colleague. So whatever interaction I may have had with them, hopefully a positive one, will come to where I am as well.
Yeah, and definitely, if someone is unprofessional, you will always remember that about them. That not like what a great job they did. You won't remember that necessarily. You'll remember, oh, I remember this time when they were incredibly unprofessional, and I really don't have any desire to ever work with that person. That's kind of sticks around in your mind.
I will close with a comment that I hear often from clinicians, particularly when you go to mid-year. It's a small world. And these guys are still good colleagues and friends. I call and talk to them. They call and talk to me. We seek each other's advice, and one of the things we seek advice about is informally whether or not to invest the time and effort in one of you. So don't forget that. These are great resources, but they also have memories. And if you make mistakes professionally, they remember those too. I want to thank everybody for being here. There's a survey that you'll be asked to fill out for feedback. I want to thank Debbie Orbach for her support of the Alumni Association for the pizza and for setting this event up. And if you have time, you can come down and meet our panel individually, and then I'm going to sprint them out to lunch to thank them for their time and effort. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.